Oh no. We got a mega raid. No. What's up, Andrew? Hey, you guys ready for this or what? Huh? On chat? Get on here and tell your friends. Oh, baby. Okay, on a 3, 2, 1. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Battlefield Show, the weekly Battlefield Show, the only Battlefield Show, which is unfortunate, on Twitch. We're still chugging along here. The game has had a rough start, and we're in a rough period of time, so it's a great time to talk about some Battlefield. So I brought a very special guest, one of my favorite YouTubers, Battlefield YouTubers, FlakFire, Professor FlakFire. What other nicknames do you have? I don't know. That picture kind of looked like Seamus back there. I don't know.
Yeah, that picture is an embarrassing one there.
I
I love that at the start of this, Julian was like, "Oh, I found this great picture, and I'm gonna put it up on the opening slate. You're gonna love it." I see it. I'm just like,
and I can see your glasses are broken too.
yes.
Man.
So,
hopefully it doesn't fall off.
I gotta fix them yet. But if my glasses fall off, yeah, they're not opera glasses. You know that I can just take off. They're broken. So I gotta fix that.
Well, it's all good. Well, this is a weekly Battlefield show. We talk mainly Battlefield, and I bring on a new guest every week, and we try to figure out, pick people's brains, see what they're thinking when it comes to the state of Battlefield, and maybe we can shine some light on some issues and try to make this game better. I mean, it's hey, we got a long way to go. But man, at least I'm trying, man. Come on. But I want to bring FlakFire. I've been a fan for you for a long time. Through all of Battlefield 1. You know, hey, it's FlakFire here. You know, like every single time, right? And you have that radio voice and everything, and it's been a journey. And then when Battlefield 5 came around, I saw you streaming on Twitch and on YouTube, and you came by to say hi and hosted my channel a couple times. So I was like, man, I got to get you on the show. We got to talk some things, because I want to know your side of the whole story. Well, let's start off with a few things here. First off,
Okay.
I want to get to know you a little bit more, because I feel like I didn't know too much. All I knew was your YouTube persona and sometimes on like Twitter and whatnot, but you know,
those are two like really separate things right there. Like,
yeah, I'm getting mixed messages. Like when I see you stream, your voice is like completely different, and I think I called you a fraud on Twitter because it was a joke. It was a joke. But I saw you on stream and whatnot, but a lot of your videos are based on like history or details, and you explain it through history. So I'm thinking your background is a historian. What is really your background? What do you do for a living?
So for a living, I'm a college instructor.
Uh-oh. No. You cut out. No, not like this. Oh, no, not like this. Is he dead? Oh no. Yo. Did it reconnect? Why now, man? Oh my god. Sorry guys, we lost connection here randomly. I didn't lose internet. I'm still here. Maybe he'll call back. Let's see. My bad. Wow. Yeah, right. Let's see. I'll get him back. He probably got a hiccup or something on his end. Okay, there you go. Okay, sweet.
We shall try this again.
We shall try this again. I don't know. It was probably Discord making a fuss.
Technology sometimes.
I know it's all Flak's fault. Yeah. But yeah, again, your background. What do you do? You say you're a college professor?
Yeah, so college instructor. I teach the audio, video production classes, some of the broadcast announcing stuff, as you would well imagine. I have a master's degree in critical and cultural communication with an option for college pedagogy. So I
Oh,
actually
wow.
went back to school specifically to go and do that. So to me, education is important. Teaching people things is something I really enjoy doing. So I think you do see that reflected in some of the content that
Mm-hmm.
I make on YouTube. Like I like the idea of like edutainment, where something is fun but it's educational. And for me, like if I don't learn something new every day, like it's a wasted day. Like that sounds very um cheesy. I don't
Okay, sure.
my brain's kind of tired right now, but it's something that
It's been
just
a long
sounds
week. Yeah.
a little bit silly, but for me, it's 100% true. Like I need to learn something new every day. Like, and it might not be related to, Battlefield or video production or history or something. The other day I was learning how to pick locks just because I wound
Mm-hmm.
up on YouTube and I was looking at some videos and I was like, oh, this is cool. I should learn how to do this. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, that's something that you see there. But no, so I got my master's in communication. My undergrad communication, I undergrad degree I actually had in both mass communication and then it was a double major with German randomly. So that's my
Oh, wow.
secret as to why I can pronounce all the German words in every
Yeah.
in every video. Um, but that is my educational background, and it is something that you talk about. Oh, you must have an interest in history.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's what I thought.
it's very much a hobby, and it was this close to being a major in college when I went the first time. So it's something that I didn't, pursue it in an education capacity, but it's a very important part of who I am and making sense of the world around me.
Sure.
Like history is really important to that. Um, and so it's just always kind of been there, more in a hobby standpoint. But I quickly learned, okay, oh, I can make videos and do audio and all this other stuff, and I can tell
Yeah,
these stories. And so you see my kind of desire that everything that I make, I want to be like a mini documentary in some ways. So
absolutely.
you
I
got
see
kind
that.
of hobby and professionalism coming together, perhaps in an opposite way than a lot of people would think. You'd be like, oh, you learned how to do video production after you were a historian, and I'm an amateur historian who likes doing this stuff for a hobby.
Right, but did you seem to want, like, before you started YouTube, um and were you out of college at that time, or were you still in college before
Ah,
YouTube?
this is one of those great moments where my life could have turned out so different if I'd made one other decision, right? So,
Okay.
back in I want to say 2009 or 2010,
Uh-huh.
I was putting together like videos on occasion for a group of people that I played with. We had a YouTube channel, and I put together a video. It was about Brothers in Arms, Furious 4. And that video wasn't, I didn't have my own channel at the time, but it got over 300,000 views. And I should have taken it as a cue that, like, oh, you should do more of this, right? Because that was 2010,
That's huge for that
you
time, yeah.
know, for that time period, if I'd seen the writing on the walls, man, I could have, really, really gotten in on the ground floor of some of that stuff. But, I was just so focused on what I was doing. I was
Right.
a news reporter, a news anchor at the time for a radio station, and I just didn't push forward with YouTube or anything like that. So I didn't
Wait,
restart.
you were a news anchor? Like
Yes, so
TV and
that's
everything, huh?
yeah. Well,
Oh, wow.
not television. We did do radio.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
We did video for radio as well, which sounds kind of weird, but we were really big on the website side of things. So we had a lot of people watch news briefs and news packages and everything, even though we were a radio station. That's a fun thing there. But I should have taken that opportunity there, and I didn't, and I still kick myself to this day for it. But I didn't really start doing YouTube again
Mhm.
until I want to say about 2014, 2015.
Okay. And then around that time, you started in Fallout 4 from your
Yeah, it
earliest videos were Fallout
yeah
4 base, I believe.
it it might have been 2016. I'm not sure, but yeah.
I don't
So
remember.
the earliest videos were 2016, and at that point in time, uh, I had been working, running a film and production equipment lab and teaching at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't doing a lot of producing in terms of like making content and editing video and that kind of stuff. So those skills kind of started to atrophy. And I'd have students come to me and say, "Hey, how do I do this?" Uh, and my answers gradually shifted from, "Well, this is how you do this," in addition to, "Well, I used to know." And
Right.
I thought that was like a crappy answer. So I challenged myself. I said, "Okay, I'm going to do a video a week on something that I find interesting or something that's kind of, caught my attention." So at the time it was Fallout 4, and I was like, what can I do that, would be helpful to people and, will challenge me to do stuff. And it
Right.
just kind of became, okay, here's how to do this, or here's how to find that secret thing, or this is the best, very tutorial kind of stuff because I enjoy doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, all the while, just studying other historical things in my spare time, much of it having to do with World War One. So when the Battlefield One trailer came out, I was like, oh, I can name like 95% of the stuff in this trailer. Maybe people will like that.
It was a natural
And
a natural progression going into BF1. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. That must have been exciting because nobody was expecting that.
no,
Nobody
it
saw that
was
coming.
it was pretty crazy.
I remember you were reacting to the first teaser of Battlefield 1. Well, actually, you didn't even know if it was called Battlefield 1. There were some rumors going
Mm,
around that it was going to be a World War One game. I don't remember what game you were playing at that time. I think it was Hardline. You were
yeah,
playing Hardline around that time,
yeah.
but
Hardline,
yeah,
I always liked. So
yeah, Hardline was something special at the time, but didn't get a whole lot of love from quite a bit of people. But that's a totally different discussion. But the teaser, the BF1 teaser, only showed a dude looking up in the sky, and you can hear like some engine noise and something like a big shadow.
mm.
And you guessed that. Like, did you know that
No,
that was a Zeppelin, or that was just a total guess just because of the engine noise?
no, it was a total guess. But I looked at it. I looked at everything
That was good.
that there was to look at, really, right? And even the sound, it's like I can hear, the
How
drone of
did
the
you
engine.
know that? How did you know that? Yeah, like you
Well,
seen like video or
no, I just know, um, like if
from
you
like
understand the size of this stuff, and you look
mm-hmm.
at the guy, and he's just got this certain awe to him about like what he's seeing, and it's like in warfare that doesn't happen very often, right?
Right.
Because everybody's seen a tank or everybody's seen, an airplane or something like that. Like, so you have to go to the base of the fear that that guy had, and it's like, what could he possibly been looking at? Where he's just like, I have no idea what this thing is.
True.
Some people had
It's
said it was
slow
a
around, and it's got to be some sort of blimp. I mean, at that point, but
yeah.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. But what else was behind your mind in that Battlefield One reveal? What if it wasn't that? Then were you thinking? Were you actually thinking World War Two?
No, I've like from the way it was presented, I was like, there's no way this is anything but World War One. So like I had made up my mind very early on that I was like, okay, this is World War. I want to see the rest of this trailer here because I saw that, and my question immediately was, if this is World War One, how are they going to marry that with Battlefield gameplay? Because from a historical standpoint, like the two don't mix. They still don't mix. Like the experience that you get in Battlefield 1, like hilariously to me, like Battlefield 1 is a way more historically inaccurate game in most ways
Yes.
than Battlefield 5 is. Yet,
Oh my! Right.
everybody is melting down over, all of these things. And in some cases, they're justified. In other cases, I'm like, do we really have to do this? You know what I mean?
I
But
know, right? Yeah, exactly.
that was my biggest concern. Like I just thought, I'm like, how are they going to do this? I just like, okay, if they do this, it's not going to be accurate. And I had a concern of like, how are people going to react to this if it's not accurate? And I've noticed some interesting things over time
Uh-huh.
where Battlefield 1 worked because nobody, like, if we look at World War II, like, it is very prominent in our cultural memory, right?
Right, of course.
Western cultural memory. Like, it's just the most recent time that we went out, kicked ass, and like something people like to talk about and prop up is like, this is the embodiment of how great we are and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a popular war, right? It was like the
Sure.
last good war, if you want to look at it that way. Um, and everybody has these opinions formed on really well circulated and often told stories. And so, if what we see doesn't gel with those stories, like, it immediately just gets chastised, criticized, and like
Of course.
gutted, right? Even though there's tons of things to World War II that you could look at and explore, and all of these things, and people just don't do that. They take one look at the Wikipedia page and they say, "Oh, well, there's nothing on here about that, so it didn't happen," right? Like
Yeah.
one of the most notable examples is of the Rotterdam map in Battlefield 5. There's a lot of criticism. The British weren't even at Rotterdam, right? In
Mm-hmm.
fact, they were. It was in a very, very small number,
Oh boy.
but they were present. They did engage German soldiers, and they did kill a couple of them, but it happened in Rotterdam. It happened, but it doesn't appear on the Wikipedia page. So, you know,
I hate that people are in that mental state of like, you have, like, why do we care so much? Like, it's a video game, it's Battlefield. Like, why can't we have a little bit of fun with it? Because I thought, let's just skip over to Battlefield 5's reveal trailer. Um, when I was watching that, I was like, dude, like, this could be an alternate reality World War
yeah.
II game, and I'm like, I'm down. Like, I'm in for that. Let's see what else they got. And then the historical inaccuracies and all that stuff, the claw arm, all that weird stuff that we saw,
the
the
infamous claw arm.
the infamous tank customization with the teddy bear. Like, shit was weird, and people were like, this could be cool. But then when you compare that to what we got for, like, an
Yeah.
alpha or beta, it's like, what happened, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
it's been a disaster ever since, I think.
it it has been. And for me, it's actually quite difficult to think about the trailer and the state of the game and the reception and some of these things because you've probably seen in some of the recent videos here, because I've been I enjoy sporting that particular tag or emblem in game, that I have one and it says dev on it. And the reason I have that is I helped during development of the game. And specifically, they brought me to DICE in Sweden, and I was there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they just put me to work on doing historical reference. And
I remember they did
they
that for Battlefield 1 as an example. They
yeah
brought in historic YouTubers to come in and do the text
yeah
on a lot of the
so
historical text and whatnot.
they brought in the Great War
Yeah,
channel.
those
They
guys.
brought in Indian Idol, and Flo, I think, was part of that. I'm not sure,
Right.
but it was something they asked for these specific things, and I'm like, I got you. Here you go. Here's everything that you need to kind of understand the context of everything that's going on, and some interesting stories about some of these people, and what it was like for them, and
Well,
this and that.
what was it? Their idea
Yeah,
first?
I
They
mean,
brought the idea first, and then you went on that. You didn't give them the idea, and then they went on it.
well, I mean, there were a couple instances where that happened, where I was like, oh, I came across this real thing, or like, this is one of my favorite stories from the time period, and you should really look into that. Um, and so it was a little bit shocking to me, and it is like anything else, right? I look at it from the point of view of like, okay, you asked for the historical stuff, you got the historical stuff. They're not out there to create a historically accurate game. They're out there to create a game that is fun. It's admittedly arcadey because that's
Sure.
what Battlefield
Always
is.
been, yeah.
It's always been that way. It is not um, a World War II realistic shooter. It's
So
not
the question,
post-scriptum. It's
yeah, the
not,
question
you
is,
know,
why didn't that reveal trailer reveal how Battlefield is known to be? Like, why wasn't it a little goofy? Why didn't it have like, it was just,
well,
it felt odd. It didn't
in
feel like the same team was behind it,
it it's interesting you say that because it's like there was some goofy stuff in there, right? Like you
I mean,
saw
goofy looking stuff, but
well,
it felt serious.
there were some other bits in there that were, kind of silly or, whatever, and it
Hmm.
just wasn't the right tone, And I think this
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
back to what I was talking about with this whole cultural memory idea of like, we're really
Right,
protective over World
right.
War II because we have like we know so much about it. Like, the same stories are repeated over and over. Everybody's familiar with, the Battle of the Bulge, or everybody's seen the
Uh-huh.
Pacific, or everybody's seen Band of Brothers. They have an idea, Saving Private Ryan, you have an idea of what that war is supposed to look like. Um, and if that doesn't match up, if the game doesn't match up to what your expectations are, you are going to inevitably upset some people. And so for me, like I said, I did some of the historical research. I
Uh-huh.
got the facts for them. I said, okay, here's how it is. This is what happened. This is realistically how this worked, or whatever. And they had to look at it and say, okay, and this is me speaking from what I think happened, like they're trying to tell a story, a narrative, something interesting and compelling. They're not trying to tell it historically accurate,
Yeah.
which is fine, and it's like, I thought that was pretty clear from the get-go. Battlefield, like, look at Battlefield 1. Like, Battlefield 1 is not historically accurate.
No
There
way.
should be, self-understood that it's not a historically accurate franchise. But
Yep.
for whatever reason, you've got a lot of people who were upset over it, and
Why
I'm
don't
not saying I don't understand why, because I do,
okay.
um, but it's still something that it's like they have creative freedom to be able to kind of tell a story there. Nobody broke apart Battlefield Hardline's narrative and was like, oh, this is totally unrealistic, or
Right.
they didn't do that with Battlefield 4. And like, I go back and play Battlefield 4 and I'm like, Irish would have never been admitted into special forces. Like, it would not happen. He ignores orders all the time. um
Yeah. You mentioned that in
you
your
know
videos. You mentioned in your videos that they should have seen this coming.
I
And they
I
should have
think in
played it
some
in
ways
specific word. Yeah.
they should have. And again, like I said, it goes into the idea where it's like everybody knows, has their own opinions about what World War II is. And why Battlefield 1 was so successful is that people might know a little bit about World War One, but they don't have strong opinions about what it should look like. You know what I mean? Like, it's very
Hmm.
interesting. Like, it's further away historically in the uh, cultural memory. And it's also one in which the United States had limited involvement. They were only in there for a part of the time, right? So
Like, how do you sell that, right? That must have been a huge challenge for them. Because they wanted to do things in order. They wanted to do a whole trip through World War II. But marketing wise and trying to sell things, especially like in Hollywood with movies, everything's a remake or something that people are familiar with already. Unless you're Christopher Nolan, you can literally make whatever you want and it'll be gold. um why do you think, I mean, they maybe they saw the success of Battlefield 1, and they maybe they just had the balls to go with BF5. This is what we want to do, and then something happened that changed that initial narrative, and now it's just a mess because I feel like something happened beginning of development where things just kind of halted and it had to be reworked and changed. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the Frostbite engine or BioWare or that whole fiasco. I don't know. But something happened to where it just didn't work out, or it's maybe something in the leadership. There's like, no, we want to go this way, and let's do it, but let's have a beta. So I ask you, what was the point of the beta? Did we actually,
Well, I think
fix something?
the point of the beta was to check on what people thought of the gameplay, because they were really
Right.
changing a lot of the way that the gunplay worked. So, for example, shifting away from this idea of uh, the random recoil. I forget what the
Sure.
little buzzword is that we hear a lot, but the idea in Battlefield 1 where wherever the sight reticle is, that's where your bullet goes, right? Battlefield 5 and a lot of the other battlefields, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, random spread.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so they probably wanted to check the viability of that, and they made quite a bit of changes to
It was
the
great. No,
gunplay.
they were
Yeah.
positive. Everyone was
Mm.
on board. But the big thing that everyone's talking about right now is the TTK, and in both the alpha and the beta, even the closed ones, they were asking the community, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And so they gave us three separate like TTK values that you might like or you might dislike. Let us know. They took
Mhm.
that feedback and they went with what everybody liked, and they're like, oh, we like the second TTK, that felt good, let's
Mhm.
start there, let's build on that. And then we did, and then it came out, some things were a little buggy and whatnot, it was hard to revive sometimes, but it like the TT, it felt right for the maps that we were given. But then Christmas comes along, and you know what I'm talking about, they someone had a whole different idea, and I don't think I've ever seen. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I've ever seen a company do that before, where they work with the community to build something, and then later on down the road, some other random dude comes in and screws up all that hard work you guys put into. That's my impression. That's what
I
I think. What do you think?
it's
Do you think
I
someone just
think
came in and like, hey, screw all that beta alpha nonsense. This is how I want the game to be run. I don't want to
what
die instantly a million miles away. I don't know.
what I think happened with it is probably in effect close to what you're saying,
Oh
at least
boy.
from the point of view of a decision was made somewhere along the line. I don't know who made it, but I think it was done around the Christmas time in an
Mm,
effort to make the game seem a little bit more forgiving for the people who are new to the game, right? And
right.
I don't really have it, that big of an issue with that. Like, I mean, it's something that I'm very reflexive to whatever game I'm playing. Like, I play
Mm-hmm.
the game the way that I think uh, the game kind of pushes me to play it. Like you have to adapt to the game that you're playing. Like, you have to change strategies. I talked about this the other day, like playing a map a particular way.
Right.
Where it's like people hate Aerodrome and Fiel, but that's because they play it like it was Twisted Steel. It's like neither of those maps is Twisted Steel, and you can't play it the same way. You have to play the game the way that it is makes the most sense. And so I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them changing the way the TTK works. Do I necessarily like it? No, not really, because I hate having to change things and like retrain myself that okay, after I
Exactly.
shoot somebody for X amount of time, I let go of the trigger, and now I have to be like, nah, I gotta hold it a little. Like, I get it, it's frustrating,
Right.
just
Let me
changing things and tweaking it,
let me
but
stop you there before I forget. CTE.
mhm.
Did you actually participate in Battlefield 1's CTE?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and
So
that was interesting for me because I had to do it on PC before it became available for console.
right, yeah, of course. But in the CT, did they actually test TTK changes? Do you remember that?
I
Because I wasn't involved. Do you remember?
To my recollection, they did, you know, and they also,
That sounds like a
tested
good
some.
idea to you. That
Yeah,
sounds like
it
that. Yeah.
sounds like a good idea. I wish we had a CTE, but
Right.
I also think it's something that's like CTE or not. I think the changes to the TTK were made because they wanted to make those changes. I don't think it's an issue of, oh, they, were changing them to see how they would look or anything like that. They have the data for that. They
Mm-hmm.
know what that's going to change and how that's going to shift things. Um, so I mean, like like I said, I don't think it's a coincidence that we had two TTK changes the first time around Christmas, the year that it was released, and the second one now around Christmas. I don't think that that's a coincidence there. Despite what anybody says, that's how I feel about it.
Same, same.
But
It's
again,
not even.
it's something that, you know what, I look at it from the point of view that if it means more people get to play the game and find out, oh, this game is actually kind of fun. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If it changes to become closer to the previous
Mm,
TTK, I think it would be good. I think more of the veterans would
right.
enjoy that. But at the same point, it's like the developers doing what they think is best for the community. And if that means that,
That's
this
fine.
might grow the community,
That's
I'm willing
fine.
to quote unquote take that bullet. You know what I mean?
It's
Um,
that's all in good, but man, why can't they? I mean, why couldn't we figure that out a lot earlier? You know.
that is probably the better question,
It's,
because really and I did a video about this where it's like
okay.
Battlefield 5 right now doesn't resemble what it was at launch in like a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and I think that really comes down to the game being released before it was fully cooked, right?
Exactly.
And
We all know that this was an unfinished product without certain features or game modes or the
well,
BR
and
mode, all that
yeah,
stuff. We know. We know.
I think they were struggling to try and find a way to make it different from Battlefield 1.
Right.
And they didn't really make it through that process all the way before they had to go and prep it for launch. And that's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate because we are really getting that kind of game and development kind of feel with this, and people are just saying, oh, it's a beta field, this kind of stuff. And it's like I have really no problem with that kind of label on it because we are seeing this evolve and develop in real time. And it's still, in my
Yes.
opinion, trying to figure out where it's going to go. And I don't have any kind of issue with that, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating not
So
only
I
for me,
ask
but for the
you,
other people. And it impacts how
right.
long they play the game, right?
So I ask you, like, was I'm trying to put my shoes into Dice's and trying to figure out the decisions or the decision making. In the past, do you think Battlefield 1 CTE was effective enough? Did it actually change anything? And like, was it worth it to add into Battlefield 5? Because it seems like the answer is a straight no, because they would have added it, right?
So for me, the CTE has more value than just simply testing something. The CTE has value in compartmentalizing critique, if that
Sure.
makes sense. So if we look at something like CTE, like yes, you can get kind of a smaller sample size of okay, how does this weapon balance out and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't get is what we have on Reddit right now, which is the entire, you know,
Yeah.
Battlefield 5 subreddit is just complaints about the same thing, and it's been that way for months at this point.
Yeah.
When you had the CTE, I believe we had a Reddit CTE
You had a
just for that.
live, yeah, Battlefield
And
Live, I think it was.
yeah, and so everything that people didn't like kind of got shoved there first before it wound up, everywhere. And there's this higher level of visibility for
Right.
the issues that we're seeing, right? And that puts it more at the forefront of the community's mind, if we were to kind of break it down like that. So, whereas in Battlefield 1 CT, if we changed something with a map or with a gun and everybody hated it, it's like that negativity was kind of diminished a little bit because there were less people playing the
Good
CT,
point.
so less people talking about it, and you also had it kind of confined to the Battlefield 1 CTE. Now, when a change goes live, it is across the board available to the public, and you get a
Hmm.
lot more pissed off people making a lot more posts about things. And it develops this idea that, oh, the developers are incompetent, or, the game is broken, or this or
Nobody
that.
likes a broken present, a broken Christmas present. Like you get anything we got new, it wasn't ready. Like we were every time me and my friends play a new patch, like man, they didn't test this at all. Like you can tell right
Mhm.
away. Oh, this new gun's broken. The assignments are on it are broken. I got people like Energized Knight going through all the guns on Twitch here and trying to trying to get the gold weapon, the
Mhm.
gold skins and all that. And he finds out there's like 3 or 4 bugs with each assignment, and they don't account for anything, and everything just seems kind of like a mess, more and more. And you brought this up on multiple videos that that's one thing they can't keep doing, and I agree with that. And it looked like they really started working their asses off and
Mhm.
gave us chapter 5, the specific, the content you're seeing right now. That katana that you're swinging around, it works, right? It's fun, whatever. It's great.
You had,
Things were on a
you had
positive
issues with the
note.
flamethrower though. Like, I gotta throw that out there.
And that's why I didn't mention it. But anyway, um, but things were on the up and up because the patch was great. They got rid of invisible people. Maybe not the invisible tanks. They come back every once in a while, but whatever. Like for the most part, they got a good patch right, and they gave us quite a bit of content. I was surprised for a live
Mhm.
service. There was a lot of everything. More vehicles. The Iwo Jima breakthrough experience when I play out for the first
Mhm.
time, that was ridiculous, especially on this newly updated engine. World War II, it was one of the best experiences I've had at that time until things started changing a little bit down the line. Things started breaking down.
Yeah.
Like
And
everyone started losing their mind.
and that's kind of the frustrating part, right? So, like, those of us who have
At
kind
it.
of been with Battlefield 5 since the beginning, right? I hit on it in a video where I'm just like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Ran
It's just
away,
this
baby.
inevitable up and down kind of roller coaster thing. And it's like many of us are just getting seasick. I'm over here like, I'm gonna puke. I need to get off. Like
This is a
there's
problem most of you guys are YouTubers, content creators are either going to somewhere else, another game, build from there, or I mean, you said you had trouble making new content. I hear from a lot of people like
Mhm.
Lossy and
Well,
other game changers are struggling to make new content because of the toxic community apparently.
it is a big problem, and it's not something I really want to deal with. I don't like booting up my computer, going to my YouTube comments, and just having the equivalent of getting kicked in the balls every time I go on there and read something. It's not fun uh, when everything is just toxic. When it's just
No, it's
like they're
not.
they're they're not mad at you, right? They're
No.
mad at the game, or at
Whoever's
decisions you
talking
guys made,
from the official channels, they're bad
right?
guy number one because that's all they
Yeah.
have.
And a lot of times we get grouped in with that. Myself and Westy, for example.
Sure.
Westy is everybody's favorite uh, shield target practice, right?
Shield man,
Uh,
yeah, shield, shield.
but it's just really frustrating because it's been that up and down, and we had the Pacific, and I'm like, yes, the end of the tunnel has finally arrived.
Yes,
I,
me
I see the
too.
light. We're going to be going up now. They got everything ironed out. This is going to be good. Uh, and then they make a change like the TTK, and I'm just like, it's really frustrating for me because my background in communication involved quite a bit of of PR and understanding, the way that people react to things, how they think. And I'm just like, this is going to destroy all of the goodwill
Why
that
didn't they
was
listen to
created
you? Why didn't they listen to you?
by this. And
Oh,
that's one of the big questions. You mentioned, why would DICE go out and do this? And my answer to that is, I don't necessarily think it was, DICE that did it. I think there was probably pressure from the publisher, EA, to make
EA.
some changes or to, meet some kind of quota or goal or, something or another. And DICE is trying to operate under those parameters, right? It's very interesting, like these kinds of concepts. And one of the things that I learned a lot about when I was in graduate school is this idea of political economy, and it just has to do with the kind of pressures and limitations that are forced on something that changes the outcome or the product that is created, right? So we look at DICE here trying to make changes. They're seeing a lot of pressure and limitations brought on by Electronic Arts, and they're seeing a lot of it brought on by the community, and that kind of shapes and changes what comes out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this might just be a thing of like, they've tried to please too many people, and it just doesn't work when you
That's one of the
hit that
big
point.
problems is you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
You would think a person who runs marketing or producing would know that. Like, that's 101, producing 101. You can't please everyone. And I think DICE just needs to, pick a direction and go there no matter what. Like, we just need some consistency. And, when we hear about another piece of news that just came out was the community broadcast. And now there's language in there that a lot of people don't agree with. I certainly don't. But one of the things was they want to go back and use something that was beloved and use it as a baseline. Now I'm thinking, why are we running circles now? Like, why can't you stick to a new baseline that you think is the right way to play your game? Why? I mean, so you're not you are listening to feedback? You're not listening to feedback? It's all over the place.
Which part in particular are we talking about here?
They want to use the 5.0 as a baseline for these new weeks that they're doing for gun balance. Yeah.
I think they're just trying to find a reference point, and one that they think the community will agree with, because
we did agree with it. It was what we liked, and then they changed it in 5.2.
Well, and by them saying, oh, it's going to be closer to 5.0 than it was to 5.2, your reaction to that, the design of that is for your reaction to be positive, to be like, okay, we're getting closer back to how things were.
But
it's
why
not
do it in the first?
but
Yeah, exactly.
it's an improvement over what we have now. And the question of why do it in the first place, again, I think there's got to be some kind of mandate handed down that said, you've got some kind of quota or, whatever. And DICE looked at it and said, okay, how do we solve this?
Right.
Churn is that big thing that everybody is worried about. People put down the game and they move on to something else. How do you keep them playing? Well, if they're not having fun, they're not playing the game. And the sad bit about it is that that's the way that it works. People need to feel like they have a chance, right? And I get that. At the same point, people need to be encouraged to get better. People need to be punished for stupid decisions, and that's why I liked some of that more hardcore, edge that Battlefield 5 had when it launched. Back in the days I used to play Call of Duty too. I played hardcore in Call of Duty because I enjoyed that experience more. And I felt it was a more tactical kind of experience. So, that's where I'm at with that. I think somebody made a decision, and that was enacted, and now we're kind of gradually working back to it. Hopefully, now that the Christmas noobs have grown their land legs and they're ready to go, right?
Yes, right. So, I mean, thinking about the future, EA has announced that they will release a new Battlefield game in, was it 2021 or in that last quarter, spanning even into early 2022. So that means DICE is going. Well, does that necessarily mean DICE is going to keep developing Battlefield 5 and adding post content?
I
Or
think they
does that
have
mean,
to.
yeah, that's what I was
What
assuming, but I
what
didn't
I
want to.
don't want to see happen is them add content because they have to. I want to see them add content because they want to, because the developers are motivated to, and because they feel confident about what it
Mm,
is that they're doing.
right.
Um, I feel like that's something really important that they need to do. Um,
But there is kind of the have to, because you need to bring the trust back. You need to
yeah.
bring a consistency back. Maybe that is an incentive to get people back, because that's what happened in Battlefield 4, where it was an utter disaster of a release, and
Hmm.
Dice LA comes in and starts doing some work, and we got patch after patch after patch. Things just started getting better, gun balance, and over that time of development, over a year and a half or something like that, um, people now think Battlefield 4 was the best Battlefield ever, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't at
I
the time.
I still remember not being able to finish the campaign for like 8 months because it wouldn't save my progress.
Right.
But
So now we're here and we have extra time. EA has granted DICE some extra time to either, of course, develop the next Battlefield game, which you're doing right now, and, have a team to keep giving the Battlefield fans some content that they deserve. And I love when you were talking in some of your videos, bringing up community appreciation, and
mhm,
after the last break, the what was it, New Year's break, um and then after that, when they came back, they're like, hey, we'll be back in a bit, all right, sit tight, and it's silence for a whole week, until, or a whole 2 weeks, and there's nothing. It's like, oh, maybe you should have listened to FlakFire's video and, like, I don't know, toss a boin to your Witcher or something. Like, give us a little bit of flair. And what they end up doing is they give you these, weekly playlists that some people like, and it's like locked, right? And then you
mhm,
give us new guns. Great. Hey, I like new guns, but they're both medic guns. Like, whoa, you're gonna change the whole meta because of your little,
mhm,
Toyota car sales event. Like, you're gonna ruin the meta. And now look where we are, where tanks are, got buffed, and now nobody's shooting them because they want to play with their little pew pew gun and kill everyone in a millisecond. So
mhm,
I remember back in BF1 that where they released new content in the skin format, right? But there are
mhm.
skins for all the guns across the board. And
Well,
I
and I mean, I think part of this is
frustrating.
symptoms of Battlefield 5 not being fully baked by the time it came out. Because you look at
True. Takes a
certain
long
things
time.
here, like tank customization. It's been like 400 and what, like 15 days or something at this
Literally, the
point,
first thing they showed was that, and it's still not here.
and it's still not here. And we don't really have skins for secondary weapons, and we don't have, there's just a lot of things that just point to a rush development. And I've heard rumors about things that I don't want to talk about, but looking at it here, it's just Battlefield 5 is just in a constant state of change. And in some ways it's good, and in some ways it's bad, and it's not an easy game to love, right? We'll put it that way.
Well, um, a couple of your somewhat newest videos was kind of speculating what's coming up next for either new chapters,
Hmm.
or hell, even the new, no, not the new Battlefield. Have you speculated about the new Battlefield at all? You said you wanted it to be Korean War, I think.
That's what I would like. I'm currently of the opinion, I want to do a video on it at some point. Like, I don't think we'll see another historical Battlefield game for a decade, just because of
This is what I'm thinking. Yes.
the reaction that people have had to this. Like, this is something that it's like a really, in terms of gaming, like, this is a generational pain right here. Like, people aren't gonna forget about this, right? Unless DICE goes the route that they did with Battlefield 4, and they are able to turn it around and change things. I don't think they're doing enough to enact
Right.
that.
But
I think they're
why would Korean War? Why is that on your mind? Why would that be so interesting? Do you have like some crazy ideas that we're? I'm not thinking. I'm like thinking Korean War is like, well, first off, it's bad timing, but you look like you had some ideas for this. Is like, ooh, this could be good. Like even single
there's
player
there's
wise.
there's tons of stuff there, and like single player for me is a passion. It's not for a lot of Battlefield players, and right, you got to realize that.
Right.
Which is interesting that Battlefield 5 got so much heat over its single player campaign when you look at the percentages of people who unlocked the achievements for like completing the whole single player campaign, and it's like a very small percentage.
Mm.
Very interesting that people are like, oh, this I can't play this game because there's a woman character, and it's like, did you actually play?
Uh,
No, but because there is one, and I feel it in my bones that just some ludicrous kind of thing there, where it's just like this prevent I can't enjoy the game because of this, even though I never played it and I never seen that part of the campaign. The game is feminist trash, blah 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 blah. Like I just don't get it. But looking at it from the point of view of Korea and things like that, I think narrative is something for me. It sets the whole story of the multiplayer. It sets the setting. It's the for a film is like a mise en scène in a way where it's just like, okay, this is really what sets the mood, the tone for everything that's going to unfold here. And I think Korea has a lot of things that haven't been visited. I think it
mm-hmm.
would very much have the same kind of reaction that you would see with Battlefield 1, that you saw with Battlefield 1, right? It's, the Forgotten War. That's what it's called. Battlefield 1 was its own kind of forgotten war, and you have people who know enough about it, but not a lot to have formed opinions on how things should be. And that to
True.
me is a gold mine, from the point of view of like, if you want to repeat what Battlefield 1 did, that's what you do.
Well,
You need to find that.
yeah, sure. I want to ask you though, does Dice have the confidence now, especially with all the hate that's going on right now, to take risks right now, like they did for Battlefield 1? Do you see that?
I think that they have the confidence to do it. I think a lot of them,
I would
have
encourage
moved
them to do that.
beyond. Yeah, I think a lot of them have moved beyond the initial pains of the release of Battlefield 5, and they're trying to look forward on like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna turn things around. And we saw that in Chapter 5, right? They delivered a
Yes.
really good experience with the Pacific. Looking at the maps, looking at the settings, looking at the way things were created.
Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm. So much
you
so they
know,
still have the
the
playlist. They still have the
right amount
playlist.
of fan service being in there. Like, I really
Yeah.
liked what they put together for that. And so I think they're on the right path, and I think they've got confidence. And if they didn't before, certainly this is going to do a lot for them. But I think that they could have the confidence to do a Korean conflict. The biggest issue, roadblock to that, I think, would be politics. But at the same point, something it's like, I think they should do it. I think it would work out really well. I also think Vietnam would work out well. And I think there are some really great stories that can be told there, to really bring
Mm-hmm.
those events to light, for a younger generation of player. And again, going back to the idea of edutainment, right? Like, I'm all for that.
I
Like,
am
anytime
really intrigued by this because
get somebody
ain't
interested and
nobody's
involved in
talking
that.
about this. Ain't nobody's talking about that for especially for the Battlefield game. And that's interesting that you bring that up every once in a while. I know you used to do a show with Echo Limits and you get
Hmm.
and
And Mambo.
Mambo and one thing I wanted to just to change the subject just a little bit as we move along here. Um, why did that stop? Why didn't you guys keep
Uh,
going with that?
what it really came down to, I think, is, uh, at the time when it stopped, there just wasn't much going on. The devs were literally just kind of recovering from launch, and there wasn't much on the horizon, and you know, uh, I think
Well, it's just a month
Mambo,
before. It's just a month before the TTK change. I think was the
yeah.
last episode. So I'm curious as to why didn't
Well,
you guys start talking about these changes people didn't like?
I think there was a lot of dissatisfaction around the game at that point in time, and it was also like we were trying to figure out, oh, are we gonna look at some of these other things, because we had other games come out, and for me it's not as big of a deal as it is for Mambo and Echo being variety streamers who play
Yeah.
a handful of different games at any given time. And Battlefield 5 just wasn't doing a whole lot in terms of numbers. And for me, like, obviously I'm still making videos on it because I love the franchise and I love the game. Is
Hmm.
everything perfect with it? No, but I still enjoy it. But one person can't host a podcast. Um, and it's not to say that we haven't talked about resurrecting it or revisiting it or like that, but it's just the realities of producing content that kind of dictate how often something like that gets made. So I'm glad that you're doing a podcast.
Yeah, it was missing, and there was a lot to talk about, and I was sick and tired of just reading Reddit and Twitter or whatever. It's like, why is nobody bringing up like a talk show? Like, there's some serious issues here that maybe a developer community manager might, you know, like the ideas we're talking about here, might pass it along to the developers. Hey, look, these guys have some issues with this. They're so passionate about our game that they
Yeah.
started a freaking show on it, and I was like, that's missing here, especially on Twitch.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just do it. Like, I had a background in radio in college, and I was fun doing like a silly like movie fights kind of type of show, or a metal show where I just play music and talk about my favorite artists. It was silly. It was for college, but then I was like, man, I was gonna start a podcast with my friend, just talk about general things,
Hmm.
pop culture stuff. That ended up tanking, and I ended up having the equipment that we bought for that. And I was like, hey, I can use this for my stream because I play Battlefield, and then the rest is history.
Hmm.
So it was missing, and I think it's still needed. And I'm very glad that you're willing to come on and talk about some Battlefield. We got a lot more to talk about. But
Yeah.
if you guys don't know, you just join in. My name is Julian Jangadu. We have a weekly Battlefield show. Have a new guest every week, and I thank you for all the raids coming in here. Hosts, followers, thank you guys so much. Again, we're here with YouTube legend FlakFire.
Legend.
Legend, yeah. Go check him out on YouTube. 136,000 subscribers on there. Really cool dude, and well, pretty easy to talk to, I must say. So things are going along here, so I appreciate your guys' support on the show so far. Okay, so one little quick thing. Did you come up with boins, or was that someone
Uh,
else?
no, I did. I
You
did.
that's
Boins was
your
me. Yeah.
boins. Legend. Okay.
Boins was me. We actually came up with that. They during a feedback session they were asking, oh well, what should we call this? Should it be Battlefield currency, or should it be this or that, or should it be Battlefield coins? And I'm like, no, no, just call it Boins. And they're like, but why? And I'm like,
Why?
because it's short, catchy, and stupid, and that's the kind of thing that people will gravitate to. It's a little bit comedic, it's fun, um, so you can call it Battlefield coins,
Oh.
or whatever it's actually called. I don't even know because it's just boins in my vocabulary, um, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's
what are we
funny.
gonna call EA's new profiting scheme? Yeah, I can see that it was kind of goofy, um, but yeah, boins. Okay, I just want to know that. Like,
Yeah, there was another term we tried to get to catch on there, was
huh.
sqwiped. I don't know if you ever heard sqwiped, but
Yes,
that
but
was
that I thought that
squad
was a
wipe.
developer thing.
No,
Was that
that
you?
That was me too. From
Oh my god, that was you?
we
Oh my.
we had a feedback session, and for this one, I was like exhausted and really jet lagged, and I meant to say squad wiped, and I just blurred my words together, and I was like squiped, and then like we all paused at the table, and we were like, "This is brilliant. We need to save this word.
You're
This is an
quite the
excellent word."
influencer because that was on official streams while they were
Squiped.
promoting the product. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty
so
funny.
squiped
Pretty
and
funny.
boins, I had a hand in there.
All right, cool. Okay, so another thing I want to know is you're really good at console and you're really good at playing with a controller on PC. I just want to let you know that.
Mm.
And do you mainly play Battlefield 5 on console or on PC with a controller?
It's almost always on Xbox. So like
Almost always
my
on Xbox.
PC isn't really geared to, run that. I mean, like it's powerful enough to do it, but I need to get a better cooling solution in it. So I just don't just just don't play games really on my PC, which is like ludicrous that I have a 2080 Ti in it. It's like I don't play games on my PC with it. I play an
Gotcha.
Xbox.
So,
Um,
so when you're doing your play tests, you're going to EA Play, and you
mhm.
see the PC in front of you, and you see that mouse and keyboard there. You ever tempted to give it a shot? Have you tried mouse and keyboard? Tell me
I
about it.
actually had to
You had
at
to.
one event. There was an NVIDIA event,
Uh
capture
huh.
event that I went to, and they didn't have controllers, and I was like, oh God, I have to use a mouse and keyboard. And so my background in like these kinds of FPS games, I really started playing competitively with clans and doing. I actually did some tournaments and whatever, like not
Cool.
professional tournaments, but with Wolfenstein Enemy Territory,
Okay.
which is a fantastic game, absolutely fantastic game. It's got a lot of team play elements that are really similar to Battlefield. If you get bored sometime, look it up. Like there are actually still servers and whatever. But I had to play mouse and keyboard for that. And I was actually pretty good at it. But
Uh,
it's like any kind of skill. If you don't do it, you lose it. And so I had to sit down. And after about 15 minutes, like I was probably like, okay, I'll hit middle of leaderboard with this. But it was just very foreign to me trying to do it and whatever. But anytime we're at a capture event or something, I think down there's mouse and keyboard. I'm like, Jeff, where are you? I need a controller over here, please. And he's like, and then he has to go find one somewhere.
hey,
Goes
look.
into like a back room and appears with like, this really old looking controller. It's just like this is the only
Oh
one we
God.
have. Like blows the dust off it, and hands it to. No, it's not that bad.
But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So I've seen. I even got my friend Old Man Ranz's in here. We went to TwitchCon together, and there was an event, a Razer event that was over there, and all they had were mouse and keyboards. I was like, dude,
Mhm.
you're console player. Give it a shot. See what you think, right? And dude, I took a picture of him and everything. He loved it. But what I'm anyway, that's just a side story. I just want to make fun of Old Man Ranz over there. But I've been noticing a lot, or at least some of my friends that are console players, and they're coming to PC and they're playing controller on PC, and they're doing quite well now.
Mhm.
And you do quite well as well. I see it. Like you can compete with the PC players, just even in a random pub. And what do you think, or do you think that the next Battlefield will have crossplay, cross-platform? Is that something they're considering? Because I think it could work really well here in Battlefield.
I'm sure that it is. I'm sure it's something that they are considering. But what we don't know is, how much work it takes in the background to get something like that done. I'm not, somebody who knows anything about programming at all, so when I'm making comments on how easy something is to do or whatever, it's my approximation understanding of how something works. But I look at it and like, if Call of Duty can do it, and it's kind of the beauty of not knowing anything about development that I can say this because it's what everybody else thinks who plays the game. Like, oh, Call of Duty can do it, Battlefield should be able to do it, right? So that's one thing. Like, I'm really happy that Modern Warfare is succeeding right now because it means that players will develop an expectation of this being there. And again, going back to the idea of like pressures influencing how a product is created. EA, DICE might feel that pressure of like, okay, people expect this. We need to do that. This needs to be a core part, a core pillar of how our game works, is crossplay. And I think that would be a good thing. I think that would be good for the community as a whole. At the same point, I will say that with the caveat, like I would love crossplay if we get a anti-cheat system figured out, because it's one of the reasons that I count myself blessed that I'm on console, is that I don't have to deal with any real cheating problems. You do occasionally get people who play mouse and keyboard on console. That's frustrating when you see it, but it's nothing compared to what the PC people have to deal with when a cheater's on a server.
It's so bad. FlakFire, you may have seen this, but or at least participated in PC servers, but it's so bad. And I think it's one of the things that's killing the game, especially here on the West Coast, United States. OCE servers, Japanese servers.
Yeah.
We can't find anything. I remember when RSP came out for Battlefield 5. And I was like, oh shit, people are going to start using them. Oh man, this is going to be great. Like, let's start getting some cool playlists going on. And look, they're completely empty. But you know the ones that weren't? Japanese servers. You know why? Because they can't play on anything else because they're all cheaters. Almost every server had a cheater in it. And now we're starting to get that here with the 150 pingers coming in here and rage hacking the entire time, and there's no immediate response. So I'm glad you brought up cheating. I wasn't even going to bring it up, to be honest, because it's a huge rabbit hole to talk about. But we hope they're going to do something about it soon. And I'm sure they banned some people here in the last week or so. I don't doubt it. But no, it's a serious problem. It definitely is.
Yeah. It definitely is, and cross platform would be great if that problem has a solution.
Totally forgot about that, so thanks for letting me know. But that is something they need to look into. But also team balancer is a big thing people are talking about. Pretty sure Battlefield 1 had a mid-round balancer. What gives?
It's again another one of those things of like, I think the game came out before it was really ready. I think that's another symptom of that. So are we going to get one at this point? I don't know. I'm not somebody who knows anything about programming. I don't know how difficult it is to get a team balancer working. At the same point. And give us an option to team switch, like if this is a thing.
Oh yeah, as a solution or something. Yeah, sure.
I'm one of the people who, like, if a team is really getting whooped, I'm gonna go over to that team. Partially because most of the time they're down quite a few people, and I enjoy a target-rich environment. So, I'd much rather fight a team of 32 people than fight a team of 18 people.
I've done that before. So,
that's how I do it. But the devs actually have talked about that most of the time. When you have the ability to team switch, people switch to the other team
so they don't get the loss. Yeah,
but it's one of those things. Like, is there any good solution to some of this? Like, and a functional team balancer would certainly be nice.
It'll be nice for RSP. It'll be nice for RSP. My friends here, like Enders is here. They were doing some competitive stuff on RSP using that, and I was like, dude, I was talking to my friend Dynamics, who also plays with them, last episode. I was like, well, what's one thing you would want to make this process of you guys playing, easier. And he was like, dude, number one, team switcher. I am sick and tired of waiting 30 minutes for dumbasses to exit the server, come back in, or with a new friend, and it's just ridiculous. So
My ghost
it
water
could
bottle there.
it could use it. Oh yeah, green. Oh my god, good job. But yeah, so again, RSP is another thing I wanted to talk to you with, and it's just, are you hearing, or do you think DICE has confidence to put this or make it better in Battlefield 5? And like, holy shit, I'm telling you, FlakFire, RSP was so good in Battlefield 1 at later on, because it took them forever to put that out, but it was good, and there was good communities there. I was like, bro, easy feature in Battlefield 5. Like, it's gonna be there day one. I was so confident. I was telling my chat and everything, dude, we'll have RSP, no problem.
Well,
Piece of cake.
and we thought, that the lesson had been learned, right?
Lessons been learned.
We were like, okay, sure, they understand that we value this. They need to understand that it's like, if you don't want to invest resources in, the game itself generating and creating communities, like if you're not going to host a league or like live competitions or something like that, you know, like communities will build themselves if you give them the tools. Like that's what's wonderful about human interaction and communication is like you
Can you
give us
believe
the
it?
tools, like we gravitate towards people that we like and we form a community around it, And it was just mind-boggling to me as well that, all of a sudden, Battlefield 5 is not and nothing about RSP. I was like,
Really?
I had hoped that they would have figured that out, by this point in time. Again, another symptom, I think, of if they had more dev time, I think it would have been there. But it's also something too that what we have with Battlefield 5 right now with RSP. I was pretty livid about it when it was announced, and they were like, "Okay, here's what it's gonna be," and I was like, "No, this
That
is
is
not good enough."
that is not what we
Um,
discussed, because they released that article. Do you remember that
yeah,
article? I'm sure you
yeah,
guys had a lot to do with that, and
yeah.
it looked great. I was like, dude, first
We had
revision.
feedback sessions on it,
Yeah, it looks great.
and it was something that I'm like, this is what's expected. Like, and we basically said, if you can't deliver this stuff at bare minimum, just don't deliver it. Or have it be longer, delay it. Like, it's
Thanks.
fine. Just when it comes out, like we expect to have the ability to build communities, and right now, it's not there. It's enough for content creators like myself to go create a server,
Mm-hmm.
and then invite some people in there, and we can film some things. Can try and go and do that crab Easter egg, right? Um, but in terms of getting, you know, 64 people into a server, like
Manually. and
manually,
keep,
like
and keep it
that
up.
is a task.
It's an
And
impossible task.
to also have it where it's not persistent. So if I leave the server, um, it's just running like a zombie, until everybody goes away. I can't make anybody an admin. So it's like even for those people who are in Japan, for example, and trying to deal with hackers and cheaters, and if we
Sure.
manage to get 64 players in a server, and the original server owners is gone, and a hacker comes in, like it's
Too
goodbye
bad.
server, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Until somebody spins up another one, and it's frustrating. It really is. It's really really frustrating.
But it kind of
Um,
seems like they had to tick that box. They had to
it
release it. It's just
Yeah,
like,
that is what it feels like. It feels like a box tick of like we said we were going to deliver something, so here it is. And if we want to get real technical on that, we can say combined arms was a box tick. So many things right now with the way Battlefield 5 kind of released, and in the months after release feel like box ticks. And again, it just goes back to the idea that it's, you know, a game that was put out before its time. And you know, I'm going to sound like a broken record on that, but you know, I
Yeah.
believe that's what it is. And you know, I get some critiques on YouTube sometimes because they're like, "Oh, you're never critical. You know, you're
Yeah,
always
I saw that. Yep.
just happy about things." And I'm like, "Well, you know, games are meant to be enjoyed, so I try to enjoy them." You know what I
It's
mean?
supposed to
Like
be fun.
crazy thought. But it's also something of like, you know, I make videos dedicated to critiquing the game. You know, and
Right.
unless critique is relevant to what I'm talking about, it's not going to be there. You know, I don't, be, don't begin every video with like, you know, we need
Right.
better RSP, you know, or this or that or whatever.
Yeah, and
Because
dev
if I'm
time was an
talking about
issue.
details,
Dev time's
it
an
doesn't.
issue because they lost Dice LA, right? Recently, people are bringing that up here in the
Yeah,
chat.
it's very interesting. Um, you know, talking about that, losing Dice LA in the process, if that is going to happen, right? They're supposed to be working with Respawn.
Yes.
Um, I think that's a good thing. I really hope that's a good thing because I'm hopeful that means uh, EA
Oh,
is going to give Dice Sweden the resources it needs. That's what I'm hopeful for. You know, like Dice
hmm.
LA has for a long time, you know, kind of played that second fiddle role. Um, there's some things there that I'm not going to go into, but um,
Okay.
you know, it's they're always viewed as that studio that just did DLCs, right? You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they
They
helped with
helped out.
Battlefield 1 and
Yeah.
you know, they did some of this other stuff, right? I'm hopeful that it means, you know, if Dice LA goes on to be its own different thing that, you know, EA will step up and, you know, fund and staff Dice Sweden like it needs to be if they're going to be competitive with some of the other major games out there in the market.
I didn't think about that because I don't see. I don't know why.
I'm being
Like,
optimistic, right? You know,
I see.
again, I'm that optimistic person that, you know, maybe it'll be a good thing, you know.
Why wouldn't they
Could
treat Dice LA better than Sweden? Why don't they see Sweden as a failure, not LA, who seems to be the savior of all games and a major help to main studio? Why wouldn't they help them out instead?
um I can't speak to that, you know.
Oh, Jesus. Okay,
That's
okay, all
all
right,
I'm
I
gonna
got you.
say.
I got you. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. See, this is why we bring FlakFire here. Okay. All right. All right. That's interesting. Okay, I'll think about that for a while. Now let's move on to something a little bit here. Now that we've reached over an hour and 20 minutes or something like that. Um, for next chapters, because pretty sure Dice is developing new chapters for Battlefield 5. Uh,
Mhm.
I I guess. Like, you know, it seems there's definitely be a chapter 6. It's going to be more Pacific, but, you know, what's really going on behind the doors? Are they really working hard on, you know, chapter 7 and 8? Like, are they done with those maps? Um you brought up in a couple of your videos a art book, a Battlefield 5 art book that tackled some of these issues. Actually, let me bring that video up here real quick so people can get a look at it. um I think it was somewhere around here. You brought up that this art book cover. Where was it? Yes, here. Let me play a little bit of this clip actually, if you don't mind. Let's see.
That means I have to
shooters.
hear my voice.
Some
Yeah.
early concept art for Battlefield 5 might have hinted at this being on the horizon. Rolling hills and a destroyed T-34 conjure
Right.
impressions of Kursk or the Silo Heights.
Okay, you
Oh, so
mentioned Kursk in the Silo Heights. Can you explain that to us non-historians here? Is
all
that
right, so
something that's a possibility for next chapters?
I think that it is. So Kursk is, you know, viewed as one of the biggest tank battles of World War II, and Silo Heights was a you know, kind of the last real definitive stand that the Germans had before everything kind of just collapsed into little pockets of fighting. Um, So historically, they're kind of momentous things, right?
Yeah.
Trying to think of how else to kind of explain this, right? But they have some iconic value, right? And that's one of the reasons that I think that Dice should really look at covering those specific locations there.
But would it turn
Um,
into another Panzer Storm?
I think Kursk there would be an expectation of that. I think Kursk would be a
That's what I would
vehicle
think.
heavy map if that is a thing.
Yep.
Um, and we chatted about this the other day. Like, I'm not a fan of Panzer Storm at all. Like, I don't like the map. But at the same point, like, I have to understand Battlefield 5 isn't all about me. Like,
Of course.
it's
Right.
not
Sure.
all about what I want. It's about providing a variety of experiences for people to play. So that the people out there who really enjoy tanks are going to really enjoy this map, whereas I'm going to be like, it's okay. Um, so I mean, I think it fills a gap. Right now, with the maps that we've had in the Pacific DLC, there isn't one really where I'm like, wow, this is a true vehicle map. I think the closest we get is some of the breakthrough modes, and you really get a lot of vehicles on that. I guess Wake Island would be the closest one to that,
Wake
but it's
Island.
still
Oh, yeah.
something that it's like it's not on the level of what you had with Panzer Storm, at least in Conquest. Um,
Yeah. Well, I remember you talking about Wake Island. You played tested as well. Did you guys notice an insane amount of tanks at the time, and you didn't tell Dice about it because we're drowning
no,
in tanks?
actually, I didn't know that. I didn't really notice that
Okay.
uh,
You
at the
guys liked
time.
it. You guys liked it. I thought it
No,
was fun at the beginning when I started playing it, but then I slowly noticed we're getting wrecked by tanks constantly.
well, and that's
Ah,
that learning curve there. People learn how to play it, and then you make adjustments. So we might see a tank removed. I don't know what's going to happen, but
true.
um, I don't remember it there being that many tanks during the
Gotcha.
playtest, and during the playtest, maybe there weren't. That was still
This was a
a couple
test.
months,
True.
couple months before Wake Island actually came out. So, um,
What do you think
you
about it
know,
now?
I think it's fun. I think it's challenging, especially being defenders and you have to fight like 8 tanks at once. Like, it's difficult,
Yeah.
but at the same point, like, it's fascinating to see the way that people react to some of this stuff. So, like, I've seen people actually start using the ability to tow emplacements, and they actually go and put them someplace
Yeah.
smart.
Because it
It's
was
like,
an
oh my,
assignment. It was a challenge, right?
people, they're learning. What is this? You know
They
what I
they
mean?
yeah,
Like,
they had an incentive. Can you believe that? Wow. And then they
crazy.
stopped. Then they stopped.
Um,
I don't know.
but
Maybe.
it's still fun. It's challenging. Um,
Yeah.
and like I said, depending on whatever the game is playing, if the map is playing a certain way, like, I'll change a class to help out my team the best. So, um, with Wake Island just being a lot of tanks, it's like, all right, how do I deal with that? And
Gotcha.
that becomes the fun of the game instead of just oh, it's protect these objectives. It's like, in order to help my team, these tanks got to go. So how am I going to do that? And that's just what I focus on for the match. So
True, true. I go assault, try to do my job, and my job is to not kill infantry, is to hunt down tanks. I remember me and a few friends got together. We all went assault because we couldn't take it anymore. Like, it was just constant. And every time they came, floating by in those big tanks, we just waited for them. And the main problem is, it's yes, it's fun to, and it's very satisfying to kill a tank. It feels like a moment, right? And you back
mm,
cap the flag or you defended the flag. But when another tank rolls around every 5 minutes and you can't hold that, now it's not
it's
rewarding at all. Now it's just a
it's
chore.
challenging though.
It's a
It's challenging.
yeah,
It's
it's a
just like,
chore.
man, like, and that's one of the reasons that I really really like breakthrough on Wake, is that it feels, if you're a defender, it feels like you have your back to the wall like the whole time. You don't get a breath.
Gotcha.
Um,
I can see that. I
and
can see that.
I enjoy that. It really gives it that feel of like, wow, like, this is a really like a brawl of a fight, and you have to play
I
dirty or play
was
creative on it.
Yeah,
So
I was with you. I was with you on that. I kind of liked it at first, right? But I believe right after that they buffed the tanks and they put a patch out, and then I think they nerfed the Panzerfaust or something. I don't know, but I don't do much damage to tanks anymore. Do you feel that too? Like you don't do enough
uh,
damage to tanks as
I know
one?
the Panzerfaust is just a big Nerf gun. The Piat launcher is the only one currently right now that's worth using. I mean that is it.
Hard to
There's
aim
no
that damn thing. I can't. That man, I always miss.
it. Go to the practice range and practice it.
Shut up. Hey,
Um,
you know, I'll try, but god dang it, man, I'm not gonna practice range. God, who made that thing anyway? I hope it was none of your guys' idea. Jesus, practice range. Anyway, that's a whole different.
I think it was the Jack Frag's idea, actually.
Oh,
Right?
okay. Well, we'll bring it up with him
He's very much
when
for
we
that.
talk. When we talk with him, we'll yeah, get good, Julian. Thanks, Oliver. Appreciate that. Okay, but that art book. Back to the art book again. I won't play the rest of the video or anything, but I think you only cover this part. But what else did you see in there that you were talking about? Did you saw other game modes? I believe that possible game modes in like the German area. I don't know. What else do you see in there?
Area. I saw some things, that looked kind of like images that I've seen of
Those tall buildings.
Ploesti, the oil fields in Romania, and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
The big carriers with troops on the deck, and that gets me thinking of, carrier assault and some of those modes. And I think that stuff would be a lot of fun if you were able to do it in the game. But at this point, it's too far in the future for me to say like, oh, it could be this, it could be that. Like I gotta see, I'm that person who's like, I need to see the trailer first and then I can pick it apart, So, give me a screenshot, give me a trailer. Like the art book is just concept art until there's something concrete about it,
I have that temptation to speculate, and I do this a lot because I just want to see something happen. I even got to rock bottom for me to where I want those weird ass cosmetics back. Like I'm like I'm so bored right now playing Conquest every once in a while. Like I can use some flair here. Like, hey, remember that? What was that? Born to Battle on that stupid jacket? Born to something. I don't know. And the hooked arms. I was like, I want arms on both my hands. Something like that. I want that bald guy with the face paint that kind of looked like a guy from God of War or something. Like, I would be happy.
The interesting thing about that is I think a lot of people feel that way. And we look at it, from the point of view, like I've bought most of the cosmetics. Like there's quite a few that I didn't buy, but I bought quite a bit of them. And the sad reason is that like I'm buying these cosmetics, but I'm buying them for the wrong reason. I'm buying them, and the reason that I bought a lot of them was, I bought these during the dark times,
Hey, that's okay to say. I was gonna say that at the beginning of the stream.
The pre-chapter 5 times, right? I bought them during the dark times, where it was just like I didn't have anything to be excited about. Like I didn't have anything that I was like, really, really excited about or interested in, or, I just looked at it, I'm just like, I'm just sad, and it's in some ways it's that that retail therapy, and I really hope that that's not the approach here, is to just make us miserable so we buy things. Like it worked for me, it worked for me, but I hope that other people don't do it, right? So but I can agree with that. Would I like to see weird things? No. At this point in time, and it's still something, it blows my mind that this wasn't something from day one. Like I'm totally fine with weird cosmetics. Like I'm totally fine with it. But when you deal with a historical game,
It,
or
yeah,
you
yeah,
you
yeah. I see what you're
need to
saying.
have the historical cosmetics. You need to have the option for people to role play, right? And I said this
Yes, yes,
in
yes, yes.
a feedback session. I'm like, people want the ability to role play. People want the ability to make their character look like how they would look if they were there. And for some people that's that tactical approach, right? Of just like, oh, these are interesting things that kind of look like what was around at the time, but they're really personalized, and they tried to make it really compelling and whatever.
We need something
And
for
then
the
you had the
we need something for the
you
boomers, you know?
yeah, you need something for the boomers. You really do. You need something for the people who are just who religiously twice a year watch the entire Band of Brothers miniseries because they just freaking love that show.
Love
you
that
know
show.
you need to give those players the option to do that. And it's sad that we don't have that option. We do in some ways, but it's just like, just give us a few real accurate uniforms, just so the people who complain about those kinds of things can feel like they can play the game the way that they want to play it.
I think
And
it's a
in
good idea.
feedback sessions, I talked about this so much. They asked us what we could do. One of the things that I told them, I'm like, absolutely do this. Give us the ability to name our tanks. Give us
Oh.
the ability to name our tanks. And
Well, what do you mean
you
by
know
that? What name our tanks?
historically in World War II, tank crews would name their tanks. So like you look at, we'll say Fury for an example, right?
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
right, you name the tank, you take ownership, you create a personal connection with some digital object in a game. Like, it's really not that difficult to do, but it's something that you want to
Dude, that's
engender that
cool. No,
kind of
that's cool. I
connection
didn't
with
think about
people.
that. I think that would have been really cool.
And
What
the
the
other
heck?
thing with it, like, I even argue this, I'm like, it can cut down on some of the really obnoxious things that people would do in games, like abandon their tanks. Because it's
Ah,
no longer, oh, it's just this tank. It's no, this is my tank. You know, no, nobody else is going to be driving, Janganu the tank. Like, Janganu the tank is mine.
the
Like, I
Jangu
will go
tank.
down with this tank. Yeah, like
Yeah, but
that's
wouldn't it brew toxicity though? Like, oh
maybe,
man, that guy
but
there again, you know?
who cares? Like, it's not going to brew any more toxicity that we don't
Yeah,
already
I
have.
know. Yeah, yeah, good
So
timing, good time. Man, I've been
give people the options to form connections with the game. Like, it's that thing that drives so much of what I'm talking about. Give people options to form connections with the game. That goes back to RSP, that goes back
right.
to uniforms, that goes back to letting people play the game that the way that they want to play it. um so and looking,
Give me your
memes
tank
people making
names,
that
chat. Give me your tank
is
names,
my
please.
my PVH tank.
My-
Obviously, you'd have to have some kind of filter system there, because you don't need people driving around with tanks that are completely
right.
ridiculous.
That's why I meant like toxic ways. That's why I
Yeah,
feel like the RSP titles weren't allowed, or maybe they didn't even code them because they forgot to add a profanity filter or something.
I don't necessarily think that that's it, but uh, it certainly was a concern. That is something we did talk about that in
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was
feedback
thinking.
sometimes, and they're like, that is a concern for us, people doing that kind of stuff. So I think it's
Yeah.
unfortunate if that was the thing. Just give us like 50 names that we could choose from that we could slap on the tank. You know what I mean? And
Oh, okay.
like, we'll do that.
Yeah, well
Yeah,
they
boomer
did that.
boomer impaler, that's perfect.
They did that in BF1, but there were single player unlocks or skins like what was I forget the name. Do you remember the black one, Black Bessie or something like
Yeah,
that, or Black
Black
Bess?
Black Bess, and you had other ones that were
I thought
like
that was
modeled
cool.
after real tanks, and that kind of stuff. It's just like, it creates a personal connection, and you need to build that into a game if you want people to play it.
Right.
That's something, it's like, I don't understand why some developers don't get that, and that's not saying that, oh, Dice is the only one that doesn't get this. um, because most of the time developers overlook that. You know, it's for me, there's opportunity to tell narrative and create stories and create connections all throughout a game, and it's often frustrating for me. I'll go and play a game, or I'll watch a movie or something. I'm like, you could have just done this one little thing and it would have increased my enjoyment of the game by so much more. Nuclear
Yeah.
time right there says like kill markers on planes. Like that I'm assuming would be really difficult to implement, but I'd certainly be really proud of that. If I shot down 5 planes in a match and I had 5 nice little kill markers on my airplane, like I'd feel like a badass, like even more than, oh, I just killed 5 players in this game. Like no, look at my vehicles, or you get like 1 star for every 100 airplanes you shoot down. So you see somebody with, 5, you know, not real swastikas in the game, but
Sure,
whatever, on
sure,
their
sure. Yeah, of
airplane.
course.
It's like, oh, they shot down 500 total airplanes. That guy I need to watch out for, because if I give him an inch, like I'm gonna, just get crushed by him. So
And this
um,
is all player appreciation. This is
it
all
really is.
like it is,
And
and they missed
player
that.
appreciation is something that needs to happen. Like, and you mentioned that, I talked about it in previous videos before,
Yeah,
like find ways to make the player feel appreciated, right? A lot of times it doesn't have to be complex stuff.
yeah, right,
Like
right.
put out a uniform that is historically accurate. Just by doing that, you made an entire subsection of the Battlefield player base that feels like it's ignored,
Jeez.
feel acknowledged. And
It,
sometimes that's all that it needs. They might
well,
look at
hey,
it and be
wait a
like, this
second.
is the one, life preserver that I need to grab onto, like for a lot of people.
Well, wait a second. What about this? Speaking of player appreciation, what about this loyalty edition of Battlefield?
Uh, I, I, I don't even like, there's certain things I hear about and I just immediately block them out. I'm just like,
Okay,
I don't
okay.
want to learn anything about this because it's probably going to make me mad. So
Here's
that's
500 points.
that's one of
Have
the things
fun.
that it's just like, I don't get it. I think there's
True.
something like talking about appreciation right there and making people feel like they've been heard. I think something still needs to be done for the deluxe edition people.
Oh yeah, we got
Um,
shafted by that.
that's still a very sore spot right there for a lot of people.
Poor Danny on
Um,
PC is still livid about that. He's still waiting. That's all he talks about, man. And I agree with him. So
um, no, it's something that it's just like, you know what, you got to make people feel valued. You got to make people feel like their
kid the show
uh,
shot. Yes.
opinions on things are important.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's very small things that are not necessarily difficult to create.
What about
Doing
okay? Do you think adding extreme weather playlists is player appreciation?
it's something different, at least. I think in some ways, yes, because I've seen Reddit posts from people who are like, I wish this effect happened more often. And for those people, if they want that, they can go on those settings and play it, and they'll be like, oh, this is awesome, it's like a whole new game. you know um and the people that don't want that, they can just go play regular vanilla Battlefield, and everybody's happy, basically, if you want to
Ah,
look at it
ah.
from that way.
But there's where you're wrong, good sir. We have tried this, and we go to regular said conquest matches, and they start with, let's say we go to Hamada, and they have the, Mars landscape the entire round, and I double check the playlist I'm in, and it's not extreme weather. Now I'm mad. It happens on every single one
It's
of them.
not a, it's not a bug. It's a feature, right?
Right. Gotcha. I look. I like extreme weather. But I just don't want it the whole round. And it's been in Battlefield 1. It didn't bother me that much. But a sandstorm was really cool. It came in at random times. Fine, great. I think it definitely gets the immersion award for sure.
Hmm.
Not too many games can do that, right? Frostbite Engine can deliver that very well. Now, having 20-foot viewing distance the entire round, it kind of gets a little annoying for me. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't see that as something people liked. It's interesting. It's different. Yeah, it's interesting and different, but
it's different. You know, it's something that if you hop on there and you're like, you know what, I don't want to play regular Conquest right now, you can go into that, and it's at least a different experience. Like, I appreciate those kinds of things, and I think in some ways they're a little bit underappreciated. Specifically, looking at
yes.
what we'll say outpost or grind.
Oh, yes.
Grind on Twisted Steel feels like an entirely different map.
It does, right? Absolutely.
Like, and I love it. You know, is it an experience that I want all the time? No. But it is nice for it to be there. You know, it's nice to have that option.
Outpost was great. That last did you get to try it? Especially on the vanilla map. What was it called? Aerodrome. Did you like that? Outpost Aerodrome?
I have not played it.
Oh, you missed out. I thought it was great, man.
That's a whole nother thing to talk about of I missed out because it was temporary and it's gone now.
That's another thing. Temporary game modes. You did bring that up in one of the Let's Talk Battlefield podcasts, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What game modes should we have? Should we have temporary game modes? And you brought up that the what is Battlefield? Like, what is the I guess the main game modes we need, right? Of course, you got Conquest and Rush, right?
Yeah,
like
Conquest,
oh my god, what Rush did for Battlefield, BF3. Oh no, Bad Company. I mean,
Bad Company,
and then to BF3, that's a staple, right? And then they did something beautiful in BF1, called Operations, and which is now Breakthrough. At least they held that, but they went a step above that and did Grand Ops. What are your thoughts about these game modes and what Battlefield should be? Or
I applaud what they did in Battlefield 1, specifically with Operations. I really liked that, and the reason that I liked it is you really felt scale. Like, you felt like this was a massive battle that you really had to fight to make it to the other side of the map, and then you went on to the next map and you could see like the other map in the background, and like that was a really cool aspect of this. But it was also something that you had all these other elements there. You had the behemoths, right? People, behemoths are a love-hate kind of relationship there. I think once you play the game enough, you're just like, I don't want to say you don't notice them anymore, but it's like the shock value of them has worn off. But I think Battlefield 5 kind of suffered because it didn't have an answer to the behemoth question. Like, it didn't feel like it was this really big, sprawling, epic thing that you were a part of. Like, the engagements felt much smaller, even though it was still the same kind of presentation, if that makes sense. And I think in some ways, when Battlefield 5 came out, people who didn't really like behemoths really actually felt like they missed them in Battlefield 5 when Battlefield 5 came out. So
those reminded me of 2142's Titans in the air, and I really thought they were gonna do some sort of Titan mode for BF1. It was gonna be a staple, but it was a pipe dream. I really enjoyed that mode back in the day, so I don't know. That'd be interesting.
The same thing you could be said about Battlefield 4 and Levolution, right? Like, we don't really have Levolution in Battlefield 5, and we don't have Behemoth either, so it has this much smaller, I don't necessarily want to say like more intimate, but it feels like a much smaller scale game than some of the other ones, and I think having that really epic, larger than life feel to it is something that a lot of players really find engaging. Um, and if you're engaged with the game, you overlook all.
Say again, you cut out there at the end.
I said, if you're engaged in a game, you tend to overlook all of the other little things that kind of drive you up the wall.
Right, gotcha. But do you think why do you think they went with temporary game modes? Is it kind of like a sales thing or an event kind of
I
thing?
don't think it was a sales thing. I think the concern was that they won't have enough players to fill them.
Players, yeah, that's all I'm saying.
That's what I feel like, and I'm basing that on I haven't seen any of the server health numbers on like how many people are on each platform at any given time. I think there's enough people for it, but I think that's their concern.
Right, there'll be too
certainly,
many dead game modes in the
yeah,
permanent
and
list.
we saw that with Battlefield 1, right?
We did. Yep.
Like when Supply Drop came out, and like after a week, like you couldn't play the mode
Right.
because nobody was interested in that game mode. So I think that was the concern there. So the idea is like, okay, they have it out for a little bit, people talk about it and they play it, and then they take it away, and then they announce that it's going to be coming back, and people are like, oh, okay, this is coming back now, we're interested. I'd really like to see something different every couple of weeks, because a lot of times we have like a month between an interesting secondary game mode like grind or
Outpost.
Outpost, yeah.
And what was the other one? A fortress.
Yeah, Fortress.
Okay, yeah. I like that they were making new game modes. I thought that was really cool, but then they stopped.
Yeah, and in some ways it makes a lot of those maps feel like different maps or new maps.
Yes.
And for some players, they tend to view that as like a brand new experience, and other players, just view it as like, oh, this is just a minor change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that I feel like really splits the community in terms of opinion on those kinds of things. So I happen to be one of the people who I really like them. Like I wish that there was something there every couple weeks, something new, or have one of those modes return just for the sake of shaking up what I can go play. But always having there be an option for it.
What should do you like what it is now when it comes to permanent and temporary?
I'm not really a fan of, taking something out, if that makes sense. Just because,
like they did with Domination, you mean?
Yeah, just because I know how the community is going to react to it.
Right.
Like people don't react well to things being taken away from them. It's a fact of life. If you walk up to somebody on the street and take their wallet, they're going to turn around and punch you. That's how it works. It's something that if I'm really interested in a game mode, and you take it away from me, I'm confused and angry. Like those are the two jerk reactions that people have, right? Like imagine like you're playing Battlefield, and then like next week they announced, oh, we're not going to have Conquest anymore. Like you wouldn't react well to that. And keep in mind that some people, really, really enjoyed Grind, or they really, really enjoyed Fortress. And they got used to playing it, and they thought, oh, this is wonderful. Like, I'm glad that I got back into this game, and I, found a new appreciation for a game mode that, it turns out I really, really like. And, if you take it away, you just took away their reason to play the game. And you did it in a way that, makes them feel like they don't have power or agency, if that makes sense. Like you executive decision that, and nobody really is a fan of executive decisions in this day and age, where everybody feels like they have a vote on something, or they get a say in what's going on.
Okay, well, one of the biggest staples is Conquest. What if they got rid of Conquest? as not a staple and went with something else.
I'd have to see what it is. I think it's something that if they took away Conquest, like there would be a lot of people just sight unseen that would riot over it. They wouldn't give it a chance for, okay, what are we gonna do here?
Do you think
Even though
that's where? Sorry. Do you think that's where they screwed up for Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront?
I'm not
They
really
got rid
sure
of
because
Conquest.
I haven't played it that much.
Yeah.
But it is something that, I think about it. Battlefield Bad Company 2 is really focused on Rush. Bad
Rush,
Company
yeah.
1 was focused on Rush. Conquest wasn't really the focus there, if it was even in there at all. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But I know it was a
Yeah.
game focused on Rush, right? And I remember that being a little bit of a roadblock for me at first. Like I wasn't totally sold on the Rush concept. I've been a Conquest player since Battlefield 1942. So for me, Battlefield is Conquest. Like Rush is a peripheral mode. It's a very important peripheral mode, but it's not specifically, what Battlefield is about. And other people have different opinions on it because they started playing with, Battlefield Bad Company, and that's fine. They're not wrong. It's just how they've learned to experience and appreciate the franchise over time.
True, and I remember I was talking to a few people maybe like 4 episodes ago. We were talking about game modes and why was Rush so successful in Bad Company or in Battlefield 3. Why were those so fun to play and all that. And the person I was interviewing at the time, it was because they built the game around that game mode. And for Battlefield 5, it kind of seems like they built these maps for every single game mode, and there was no focus. They more focused on maybe infantry versus vehicles. That's what they focus on instead of the game mode as a whole and how it would flow.
I think you see that in the core game. I will say for the Chapter 5 content, so the Pacific, I think it definitely lends itself to that Rush style game mode, specifically sector by sector, that breakthrough kind of mode. I think the maps are just really designed for that.
Yes.
I have a much better time playing operations on, or not operation, breakthrough on Iwo Jima and Wake Island than I do playing those maps in Conquest. And I agree with the idea that like the maps play well with the game mode they inherently kind of support, and in this case it's that Rush style game mode for that. So that's why I think Bad Company and Battlefield 3 really focused around the idea of Rush, and why it worked is the maps were designed for it.
Right.
And we had that discussion, Echo Limits and I, on the old podcast, and he very much was the idea that the maps were designed for it. That's why they worked.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
So,
and coming up here, why did Grand Ops fail? Because it involved multiple game. Like, I'm surprised. I thought that was really gonna take off. Grand Ops. That
for me,
interesting.
Grand Ops is an example of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it.
Interesting. Okay.
From the point of view of just like, it's too complex a game mode. Like, people don't like overly complex things. They like enough where if you hop in and play it for your first time, you can figure out what's going on. Grand Ops for me just had too much happening. It just had too much going on, and so that was problematic. I think for me, because it's also not predictable in some ways, because it's like, okay, it's the same thing as Operations, but now there's a chance that you'll go to this sudden death thing, and
God, I was so hyped for that. That was gonna be huge, and I thought it was gonna be common, and then you find out. Well, this is what I thought about Operations. Grand Operations. I thought they mentioned that Grand Operations is flexible. It is something we can change over time. It doesn't have to be the same game modes every time. We can start with a different game mode. And I thought
Yeah.
that's how it was gonna roll, but we just
Well,
had airborne the whole time. I
yeah,
don't get it.
and that's a big concern there. The other thing also is just like other parts of the game were too complex, like the scoring system, like what constitutes a major loss or a major victory. You
Right?
know,
Yeah.
right now it's just
Exactly.
like letters up on the screen, and I'm like, I have no idea how you to this conclusion. I can't
Right.
understand, and maybe if somebody sat down and explained it to me, then I would get it. But the problem is just by it being complex enough for somebody to have to sit down and explain it to me, like you've lost 90% of the audience on that. Like it's got to be easy and intuitive. Like, oh, I took all of these sectors, so it's a major victory. Like it needs to be simple. Like you can divvy things up into different, sections of a game mode or whatever, but it's like it needs to be simple, intuitive, easy to understand.
That's what
Like
Breakthrough was.
people do not react well to things that are even in the slightest bit confusing. We live in a world where like everything has to be convenient for us, and the moment it's not convenient, we stop what we're doing and we walk away.
True.
That's one of the things. I have students that I tell them, during lessons, if they're creating something, I'm like, whatever you're creating, don't make me work. Like if I look at your business card and I have to work to find your name on this thing
Yeah.
or determine which information is the most important, like I'm out of here. I'm not reading. It's the same kind of concept. If stuff is too complex, even remotely complex,
Oh,
I'm
jeez.
done. I'm out.
True.
And most of most people out there have that same attitude. If something isn't easy or intuitive, first go, like they move on to something else.
I thought
I
I thought Grand Ops was gonna be those easy mode, but I thought it was gonna bring variety every week. I thought so. Because like they said, Battlefield's not never the same. That's what
Mhm.
they ran with, and I thought Grand Operations was gonna be that mode that changed every week. And guess what? The first thing you hop into is no longer airborne. It's now rush, and the things like that, and the weekly. I mean, I'm sorry. The other game modes, they like Outposts and others.
Mhm.
We'll start with that, and then we'll move on. Like we'll make a little story and improve on the cutscenes, and they never ran with it. I don't understand why. I mean, it felt like they had something going there, but they
There's
canned it. I don't
there's
know.
a lot of stuff with like information and kind of crossed wires and how some of the stuff was to work out and what was communicated and this and that and
Yeah,
you know
I agree. I agree, and it goes to show of what's priority. I mean, look at Firestorm. I mean, we could have a whole podcast just on Firestorm and why that
you
failed.
definitely could.
And
Um,
well, it's just they never gave it the TLC that it needs. You need to keep that BR updated constantly. You need to fix the things that are broken immediately, like the looting shouldn't have been released that way.
See,
BR
and
game.
the sad part about Firestorm is that like literally when you broke it down, there were only two things that people like didn't like. Like one of them was the looting. The other one escapes my mind right now because I'm tired. But the
Yeah,
looting
me
was one
too.
of those things.
Yeah.
Like if they had fixed the looting quickly, if they had had it right from the beginning, the story would have changed. Very possibly might have changed. But again, it's one of those things like I just mentioned. It's just like if it's not convenient, they don't do it. From the point of like the community, just there's no real room on this kind of stuff. Like if you make me work for something, I'm out of here. And that's the story of Firestorm's loot boxes, because they didn't have loot boxes. They had that loot crate explosion, right? And
Oh, yeah, right, right. Gotcha.
from the point of view of somebody who's just like, I don't like having to walk around and look at items on the ground in a disorganized manner. Like that is enough for some people to just say, I don't like this. I'm going to go play Apex.
Immediately.
Or yeah,
It's like,
immediately.
what
No,
is this? Whoa,
it's
whoa! I just killed a
it,
guy, and there's poo everywhere. Like, what is all this garbage? Ow.
well, and you trying to sort that out, and you trying to sort it out when it didn't, really work right at first, right? You had to try and really finagle
Big,
your
yes.
way to pick up the exact thing that you wanted. And again, something's not convenient, it's not easy, it's not intuitive. That's enough for people to just say, you know what, I'm gonna come back when this game's ready, or when they fix this. Um, and a lot of times
Yeah,
they just don't
what's
come back. You know,
yeah.
they just don't come back. They move on to something else. Um, so it's one of those things that it's like if that one thing had been different, maybe things would have shaped out different for that part of the game. But it's also something that launching that in conjunction where it's tied to Battlefield 5, like I wouldn't have done it that way. Um,
It looks like there's
it
a cross between simplicity and creativity, and it seems like either one department in DICE or someone else like just kind of takes charge, and there's no
well,
like balance or something.
well,
But
and
I
this
like
was all
create.
done by a different studio, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally
Firestorm was
different
done by
studio.
Criterion.
Right.
So they were working on that independent of the other rest of the game. So it does feel a little disjointed in that way. I think for better as opposed to worse, because Battlefield isn't a battle royale game, so it shouldn't have been made by the same people to the same end. Like I like that Criterion was brought in to do that. At the same point, like you look at all this stuff and you're like, wow, they put in so much work to make Firestorm work, and it didn't. What else could they have
Mm,
been spending,
yeah.
that time on there? And that's the big question.
Well, the big question was, is this Firestorm or is BR? Is it going to be standalone? Is it going to be free? Like, I'm so positive they must have talked about that, and I don't EA. That's probably EA's call at that point. I don't know, but
Well,
it seemed
and I
like a good
mean,
idea.
it's one of those things that it's just like, Firestorm should have been free and it should have been separate from the game. And if it was, don't look at Firestorm as added value. Don't look at Firestorm in terms of everybody's like added value. Can you call it that right now? But it's something like Firestorm should have been that thing, that standalone BR that gives you a taste of Battlefield.
Ooh, I like that.
It should have been a taste of Battlefield. If you like what you see, check out the rest of the game.
Yep.
That is 100% what it should have been. So I'm not sure why it was done differently than that. I suspect it wasn't DICE that made that decision, but it's still something that I look at it like, wow, that was a really wasted opportunity, because if you kept it separate, people could have really, kind of eased into the franchise, be like, well, I like Firestorm, let me check this out. And oh, it turns out I really like the Battlefield gameplay mechanics, and yeah, I'll shell out money for this multiplayer game. It's got a single player campaign. Okay, so you get them one foot in the door with Firestorm for free, and if they want to take that step inside, let them do it. But I
Gotcha.
mean, certainly it'd be getting more use than it is right now, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's
I don't
still
even remember
something
the last time I played it.
I still hope that Firestorm goes free to play. Um, do I
Yeah.
think it's going to happen? Not anymore at this point, but I still hope that
Player.
it would happen.
Yeah, that player incentive, that player appreciation. I don't know if that's possible for them, but it would be interesting. Okay, last subject here. I promise, and we're gonna go to bed, okay? Or I'm gonna go party after this. But shit, you can go to bed if you want. But
I'm an old man now.
yeah, um, I'm old too, but I got invited. Whatever. Anyway, I'm pretty tired.
No,
But
I'm
I'll
actually only
survive.
like 20, but this is what, like 3 years of Battlefield
Papa.
5 content creation does to you.
Yeah, shit. Oh man, maybe I shouldn't keep doing this show.
Get out while you can, Julian. Get out while you can.
No. Okay. Should Battlefield 6 be on a new engine?
That is a really good question.
Thank you.
It is one that I am highly unqualified to answer, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Because I know nothing about programming or anything like that. But I do pay close attention to some of the news articles that come out where they talk about frostbite. And there was one that I read a few months ago, and it just talked about how difficult frostbite is to work with. And I find it really interesting that Respawn, who did Apex Legends, right?
Yeah.
And who also did
Star Wars?
Jedi Fallen Order,
Yeah.
right? Those were built on Unreal, right?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to me that, we have Dice LA being shifted under somebody, under Vince Zampella, who was running Respawn, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would expect to see an engine change with that. So whatever Dice LA is doing, I would expect would shift to Unreal, and that's I don't necessarily think they're going to be doing Battlefield. I think they'll be doing something else. But I just find that odd because you can see from the writing on the wall that EA really wanted to press everybody into using Frostbite so that you had developers who could be shifted around to do different things, right? So like DICE did, Star Wars Battlefront 2, and there were some other studios in the company that also worked on that, and whatever, because everything was running on Frostbite. You want to have the ability to have your employees work on multiple different projects. And just those articles that I've read about it said Frostbite is really difficult to work with. Graphically it's gorgeous. You can also do some really crazy destructive effects. But it's something like, is it worth the complexity? And I think that's the question that the developers are going to have to answer. And I think EA is looking at it probably from the point of view of like, what is the way that we can, as any company would, it's not just EA. What's the way that we can get the most money out of this? Get our most money out of this with the minimal amount of time and the minimal bugs and problems. And Unreal Engine, it's easy to hire people to come and use that engine because a lot of them train on it. They understand it out of the box, right?
Right.
Frostbite probably has to be learned. There's probably a tougher learning curve with that than there is with Unreal Engine. And so it'll be interesting to see if they change anything. I don't know how well a game like Battlefield would work on Unreal, just because it's not
Something they're
optimized
privy
to do.
to.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure. It's something I think it's certainly possible.
Okay.
Would it have some growing pains? I think absolutely it would. Do I think it might be better in the long run? Potentially yes, but again, I'm not an actual developer who codes things, so I don't know.
Oh, we'll see what happens. It would be really cool to see that. I think it would be, yeah. BF in an Unreal would be interesting indeed. You want to go back to premium?
I don't think so. I know that's a very complex topic to unpack there, and there are a lot of people who are very opinionated about the idea that the reason Battlefield 5 is terrible is because
there's no
we got
premium.
this. There's no premium, and right, and I think DICE is in some ways. I remember talking to David Serland specifically about post-launch content, and he very plainly told me that, like, if we don't put our money where our mouth is on this, call us out on it. But he's like, we're gonna deliver the same amount of content that we would have done if it was premium. And I think a lot of people were very skeptical of that at first. And I think we're finally getting to the point where, DICE is, into the post-launch DLC production mode, and they're starting to put out content that is on par with what we saw with some of the premium services. There's some graphs floating around out there on Reddit, and it's not to the level of like Battlefield 4 or anything like that yet, but it is comparable in some ways, and hopefully it continues to travel upwards from that. But it's going to be a decision of how much time does EA want to invest in having developers create additional content for a game that isn't pulling the same numbers as maybe their expectations were, um, is anything like that. So, but again, I don't have a problem with the live service thing. It's also something that you know um, it's got its own downsides. It's something
Sure.
that it kind of gives developers a way out if something doesn't work right, or if they don't deliver something on time. Like, oh well, trying to produce this stuff as fast as we can, and
Right.
you kind of have loosely defined uh, deadlines for things, and I think that's more developer friendly. But at the same point, it's frustrating for the player because they don't know specifically what they're going to get. And that was the one
Yeah.
nice thing about
Yep.
premium, that you knew you were going to get X
Yep.
amount of maps, X amount
True.
of expansion packs by the time the year was up or the premium pass ended, right? Like you knew that. With Battlefield 5, with um, the live service, it's just like we have no idea. We have not the slightest inkling about how long this is going to continue to go on for. DICE could randomly decide, okay, after Chapter 6, we're pulling the plug because we're not
Right.
getting the response that we want to get here. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but it's still something that you don't have that whole thing of, a premium pass was like a promise in some ways. Excuse me, that they have to provide this kind of service. But, we've seen the same kind of thing with Battlefield 5 so far, of just like, let's check this box. If they promise that they're going to deliver more maps and the maps are awful, it doesn't
Yeah.
change. You don't get to label those freebies as part of a premium pass and say, no, I want another. This one was bad. Um, you don't get to say that, so it's difficult to say. But I think that DICE could do a whole lot worse than what they've been doing with the live service, and I think we're starting to see more of that. I think they're starting to win over some people with that. I think they're starting to build some trust with the live service, at least in terms of the content they're putting out.
They
Um,
were. They were.
See,
Not
but it
now.
was it was a
I don't think not at
TTK
all.
change. It's a TTK change. It wasn't the actual content.
Where's the
Um,
actual content? What are you talking about? What
you
are you
got
talking about?
you got Chapter 5 maps, man. We got another map coming out
That's
soon.
over and done with, man. That's so 2001. Dude, what are you talking about? I got this Christmas skin. Like, what is this? I got my extreme weather, bruh. Like, where's my actual content? Maps. They say, hey, we are announcing a new chapter, FlakFire. There's a
This
map coming.
this
Come on.
actually is a really important point, and I brought this up in feedback sessions. And a question arose. I forget from who, but you know, we thought about it and we were like, do some of these other things count as actual content? Does
Yeah,
the cats
right.
and dogs kind of plays, does
No.
Outpost, does this other stuff count as actual content? And the answer that all of us had was no, it doesn't,
Very good.
because it's based on content that we already had. And it's like I can appreciate what they were doing with those new things. But it's still, in the eyes of the vast majority of the player base, it's still just a rehash of stuff they already had. Um,
Well,
and
in the past, for like a veteran Battlefield player, maybe you might agree with me. Content was maps. Like
mhm.
that was it. Like There
Well,
were when
and
they're, you know,
we were used to the bigger drops. Like we got 4 maps and we got X amount of weapons, and it all came out at once, and you just got like slapped in the face with content.
yeah, I like it. I
And
love it.
you're a lot more reactive to that than you are if somebody, sneaks up behind you and pokes you slightly with content.
I don't like drip. I don't like getting drip fed FlakFire. I don't like that. I think it's lazy. I think a week of content is banana skin. I'm like, nah, like that's lazy. You gotta step that up. So that's what I think about it. I just need maps. Not even okay. Look, not even map drops. Like 2 maps at one time is great. That's great.
Mhm.
And make that a playlist and all that. Those are fun. But you drop 4 guns on me, dude. I am like, it's Christmas time for me when it comes to Battlefield. Like, I like that. But if I'm getting 1 gun like every 3 weeks or something, I'm like losing
and
my
I mean,
mind.
like a lot of this is formative kind of stuff here. Like they've never done it this way before,
Oh,
right? I
come
think
on.
they're taking notes now to figure out, okay, with the next Battlefield, how are we going to do this? Do we want to do it drip feed? Do we want to do it where everything comes out in big chunks? And that was a question for us in a feedback
True.
session. And I said, when the Pacific needs to get here, it needs to feel like it gets here.
Big chunk. And it did. It totally did. No, the Pacific was a
And
big chunk.
the community responded well to that.
So, chapter 6, big chunk. All I hear is 1 map. How did they make anyway, that's big chunk. That's another discussion, but we hope for the best. We bring on people like you, and we try to get the word out on what we're thinking on our side. And that's what this whole show is about. I will continue doing the show until I look like FlakFire, and then I'll probably quit. I'm just kidding. But no, I hope for the best for Battlefield 5. I'm going to keep playing it as much as I can, as much as I can join servers here on the West Coast. So I can only hope the next chunk of Battlefield content, Battlefield content will be to my desire, to my liking, and I hope so, and I think it might, especially with DICE can get really creative with some maps, and I think there's some good stuff on the horizon. I really do. They got too much time. They got way too much time, and if they don't deliver, I mean, I'm not expecting Pacific delivery like they did, but I want to see some creative things coming out, and I'm sure you do too. But you brought up simplicity. There's a fine balance between creativity and simplicity. They'll have to be careful with that, and they'll have to be careful with that in Battlefield 6 or whatever they're gonna call it. So I just want to thank you, FlakFire, for coming on in. Chatters, right? We're showing chat appreciation here, okay? I love you guys. Thank you for staying the whole 2 hours and 30 minutes. I appreciate. If you guys missed any of the episode, you can watch it on my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter, and of course, the Godfather FlakFire is on YouTube. You'll find him there. You gonna start streaming more or what?
That might. We'll see.
We'll see. I'll go check out his channel and you'll see. And Twitter and all that good stuff. Again, we're gonna go raid somebody here, so stick around, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys enjoyed the show, give the channel a follow, and yeah, have a great weekend. FlakFire.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks, dude. Have a good one. Good night, everybody. Take her easy. See you later. Goodbye.
See you guys.